What's up everyone, welcome back to my channel Reef RX. Today we're going to be talking about keeping a low maintenance reef tank. And what I mean by low maintenance is minimal water changes, if any. So in my tank, if you guys have been following me for any amount of time, you'll know that I normally don't do water changes. When I do water changes, because something is wrong, like this coral right here that has almost completely died. Other than that, I don't do water changes, and we'll talk about how I do that. As always, if you enjoy my content, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, leave some comments. It really helps bring my channel to other viewers like yourself. So let's get started. When was the last time I did a water change? Well, last time I did a water change in this tank from the day I'm taking this video was about a month ago, and that was because I had an issue with my tank where I started losing some corals, like you guys can see here. Other than that, the last time I did a water change was probably about 6 months ago. And I have figured out what happened with my tank, why I lost some corals, so we're going to talk about that and how to prevent that going forward. In order to do minimal water changes, you need to be able to replace the minor and major trace elements that your tank will consume, like the corals, and if you have a refugium, those will also consume some of those elements. So the product that I use to replace those elements is all for Reef. It's made by Tropic Marin, and it's one product that you dose based off of your alkalinity, and it keeps all your minor and trace elements in check. So the one thing you need to do with that product, and again I've learned the hard way, is you need to send ICP tests out to the lab to check all your elements that we can't check as hobbyists at the home level. This will ensure that nothing is lacking. What happened with my tank and why I had some die off of some really nice colonies of corals was because my potassium got way too low, and a lot of these corals just died overnight. And you know, the reason why my potassium was likely low was because of my nutrient export method, which we're going to talk about in a minute once we jump down to the sump, but was likely the consumption that my corals had of potassium, as well as the chaeto that I have. So chaeto also consumes potassium and other minor trace elements. So we're going to talk about that and how you can avoid water changes for the most part. Anytime you see something that doesn't look right in your tank, you should always do a water change unless you know what's going on, and a water change will not correct it. And you know what those one-offs will be, like if your power was too high, if you adjusted your lighting, or if you dose too much of something and your alk or calcium or mag was too high. If you know what caused your corals not to be happy, then you should address that issue. And a lot of times that issue might be addressed in a water change, but not always, I guess, depending on what you have. So let's take a look in the sump and talk about how I make this tank happen with barely any water changes. All right guys, so here we are in the sump, and what I have going on in the sump is, I would say, mainly the reason why I don't need to do any water changes. Number one reason people do water changes, in my opinion, is nutrient export, and secondly, to replace those minor and major trace elements. We've already talked about those elements and what I dose. This is the product here. I buy the powder version because I dose about 90 mLs a day of this product, and if I were to buy the liquid, it would be quite expensive. Now that I have my trace elements managed and how I'm going to replace those, the second thing I need to worry about is nutrients, is phosphates and nitrates. So I need to make sure that I'm removing those nutrients from my tank so the levels don't get too high. You do want some nutrients in your tanks, otherwise you will starve your corals and you'll likely have algae blooms and other issues with your tank. However, we need to remove some of the nutrients so the levels aren't too high. So I have several things going on in this sump, and I'll explain each piece of it. So first up is the Red Sea Reef Mat. This is a filter fleece roller. This is a replace of filter socks. So I'm not one that'll change filter socks consistently. Either method is fine. If you want to do filter socks, no problem. Just make sure you clean them regularly. Again, that's not me. So I use a filter fleece roller. So what happens is this clean roll goes into the tank. Once the water level rises, it triggers a sensor to tell the roll to advance because the water level has risen too much. And then the mat will advance and it'll put in brand new fleece into the tank, and that will help remove some of the larger pollutants like fish poop, fish waste, stuff like that. So that right there, for some people, depending on your bioload, is enough where you don't need to do anything further. For me, I feed pretty heavy in my tank. I make my own fish food, so if you've seen my videos, you'll see I've made a video on how to make your own fish food, so I do that. And because my phosphates are elevated, I need to do other methods as well to remove some of the nutrients. After the water comes out of the fleece roller, the water goes into the sump, and then it goes into my refugium. So a refugium is a place for macroalgae to grow. There are several different types of macroalgae you can grow. I grow Chaetomorpha, or Chaeto for short, and that's why I have this light here. So this light normally I have offset with my display tank light schedule. So if my display tank lights are on, the refugium light is off. However, for the purpose of this video, I have turned it on so you can see what it looks like. So this helps the algae grow into the sump because you don't want that algae growing in your display. This also can help increase your pH in your tank when your light cycle is off. After the water flows through the refugium, it goes into the second chamber where I have a skimmer and my return pump. So right now my nutrients are pretty low, so the skimmer I am not using to actually remove nutrients from the tank. However, if your nitrates were high, you would want to run a skimmer. The refugium more helps with phosphates, where the skimmer more helps with nitrates, although they can help with both. So my skimmer, it's skimming to help add air or O2 into the tank, and that helps bring up the pH. However, like I said, once my nutrients are on the lower side, I'm not actually skimming. Whatever is collected into the collection cup is coming right down back into the strain, right back into the tank. So this is purely for to help raise the pH. This, for most people, is way too much than what you would need to help remove nutrients from your tank. However, if this is not enough, there's also more you can do. Before we get into what else you can do, if you have a fleece roll or a filter socks and you have a refugium and your phosphates are too low, other things you can do is reduce the light cycle on your refugium lights. So the Chaeto or macroalgae, whatever you have in there, will grow when that light is on. So if your phosphates are too low, and let's say you have your light cycle on for 8 hours a day, maybe try changing it to 4. I always recommend to not do drastic changes in a reef tank. So if you have it for 8, maybe you want to, knock it down to 6, and then give it a week and retest, and maybe knock it down to 4. However, you need to do what's best for your tank. Everyone's tank is a little bit different. If you have all 3 of these methods going and this is not enough to remove nutrients from your tank, there's other things you can do, like run some reactors with GFO or granular ferric oxide, which will help reduce the phosphate. You can also use biopellets. I have never used biopellets. I have used GFO, but I currently don't need it. And there's other methods as well that'll help remove the phosphates. So everything we just talked about is a great start to help you reduce the amount of water changes you need to do. However, for a low maintenance tank, you still need to take care of your equipment. As you know, as hobbyists, we spend a lot of money in our equipment. Some of these pumps, like I have the Ecotech MP40s, I believe these retail now for over $400 a piece. I have 2 of them. My point being is we spend a lot of money in our equipment. So you want to regularly clean your equipment. So your return pumps, your wave makers, power heads, or whatever you have, and even the lighting. So the lighting I have up here, you want to make sure you clean above. If you have a fan inlet, you want to make sure you get the dust out of there. Just really take really good care of your equipment because you want it to last you. Unless you have disposable income and if money is not a concern to you, then maybe this isn't a problem. If you have disposable income, and you got money coming in from all ends, drop a link in the comment. Let me know how you got there, because I'm also interested, and I'm sure everyone else watching this video is interested as well. Point being, you got to take care of your equipment. Same thing with your skimmer. Always good every couple of months to pull the whole thing apart, take the pump out, clean inside the pump. Really give your equipment a good deep cleaning. I use citric acid to help clean my equipment. You can put your equipment in citric acid, let it sit for an hour or two, let it run, and it'll really do a great job cleaning your equipment and making everything easy to come off. So if you look at my return pump, I have quite a bit of coralline on my return pump on the wet side, which, as you can see in my tank, I have quite a bit of coralline algae. But if I put this into citric acid, let it sit for maybe an hour or two, that coralline algae will come off like nothing, and that pump will look brand new. So I try to clean my equipment every 3 to 4 months. Maybe the return pump I do a little less often, however I should do more frequently. And the other good thing to do with lighting, especially a Refugium light, if it's not waterproof or water resistant like a Tunes Refugium light, is to wipe it down with a wet paper towel with RODI water once in a while. So if you take care of your equipment, you remove nutrients from your tank, and you dose those elements being consumed by your tank, you will be on the right track to a low maintenance reef tank. If you guys have questions about any of my setup, please let me know in the comments. I also have many videos from the past that talk about what I do for my tank, and I'm happy to answer all your questions. I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something, and thanks for watching, and we'll talk soon.